Do it. All right, friends, back in business week 11 college football here at Stokastic. It's live before lock time. We're going to talk about the slate, talk about the plays, talk about the tools, and most importantly, build some lineups that hopefully are going to make us some money here. I'm Ben Reza. I'm joined as I always am by Matt Gajewski. We were just lamenting Iowa before the show, but we got plenty of work to do right now. You're donning some Marquette basketball gear. I'm wearing the Citadel. I think we're ready to rock.
We are ready to rock. We're ready for
Yes.
the overlap between the two elite college
Oof.
seasons. But yeah, it's a great day on deck for football. A lot will be determined in the SEC, and I'm excited to see how it shakes out.
Big time games, elimination games potentially. With that in mind, we're not going to just dive into wide receivers, but we're going to dive into injuries. And one of them is certainly on that Ole Miss sideline, Trey Harris, Haynes King for Georgia Tech. What are the status of Monangai, other players? What are we waiting on? What do we know?
Monangai's out. Luckily, we got that a little bit before with the Big Ten injury report. Don't know on Trey Harris. Ole Miss has a lot of stuff in flux right now. It looks like he's going to try to give it a go. We're not expecting him to be a full go out there, but we will see as we get closer to that game kicking off. But that's about it. There's always some unexpected injuries you might see, especially in the Big Ten. But yeah, it seems fairly clean as of now.
When we look at, yeah, what about the quarterbacks? I'm not sure these guys were going to factor in, but from it looks like Green is out, Haynes King is giving it a go, Lagway is out.
Yeah, I think Haynes King is a true game time decision.
Okay.
He's out there. I don't really know what to make of it. We'll see. It's an upper body injury with Haynes King, so who knows?
All right. Let's see what we can
we just don't know.
we don't. And listen, it's been that way from a betting standpoint all week where some of these spreads, the Brady Cook news, things like that. So we're going to get into it in more, chat. I see you guys already pouring in. Let's get it right off the bat. If you're new to this channel, I want to welcome you to Stokastic, all things DFS. If you're here all the time, I like that. I like your style, but hit the like button. It really does help us out. We just talked about injuries. Before we get to quarterbacks, let's talk about pricing. When I'm scrolling through, we've got, the usual suspects, guys like Cam Warren are pushing nearly 11,000. Jackson Dart, Travis Hunter's on this slate. Is pricing loose? Is it tight? Are there premium options up top? What do you see on a macro level?
It's really loose today. There's a lot of injuries and just mispricing from DraftKings and their slow algorithm to adjust to role changes, injuries, whatever it may be. You can play whoever you want.
That makes it easier. In some ways, there'll be a game theory aspect to it. Chat, what do you say? We get into it. Let's get into the players, into quarterback. And let's start. Another guy, actually, he was hurt, but it looks like we've got clarity. Mr. Daly is back, is he not? For Army. And I want to start with him against this North Texas team. I actually think Army could get tripped up today, but the line certainly reflected that he's a boost to this offense. For DFS purposes, where does a guy like Daly slide in?
Yeah, he's back from trench foot. Congrats to him. I think he's a bad DFS play overall. He projects fairly well, but the way I think about Daly and any Armed Force quarterback is you're now paying $9,500 for a running back. Would you rather have Daly or Taj Brooks? Would you rather have Daly or, Phil Maffa? When you factor in price, I would certainly rather have either of those guys. So if he's going to carry ownership, I'm going to be light on Daly. And he has the injury, so I think that just adds more concern. People are going to play him. So, make a stand if you want, but I have a little less interest in the Army side of things than normal. They've been getting crushed in the markets. North Texas money's just been pouring in on that side. But I just have a lot of problems playing a 9,500 running back who you need to use in a quarterback position.
If you don't go to him, it looks like he could get some ownership, but then there's that kind of next tier. We'll get to Cam Ward in a little bit, but I want to talk about Will Howard. I want to talk about Sanders, who a lot of times he's only on the night slate or things like that with Colorado. He is here. Is that where you're kind of building out right now when you start to kind of fill in the blanks for how your lineups are going to fall?
That game is the best one, and I don't really have a strong preference on how you attack it. You can play both sides of the game. Shador and Baron Morton are pocket passers, but these teams both have exorbitant pass rates. They're both extremely fast. Colorado's 37th in pace. Texas Tech is 21st. Colorado is very improved on defense this year, but Texas Tech is an absolute sieve. So that's why you see the total up at 63 points. Shador, I think, is fairly priced at 8,900. Same thing on FanDuel. And then Barron, I think, is a little underpriced. You know that neither of these guys are going to give you anything with their legs, but it's so easy to stack this game. You have players at every single price point. And you can mix and match the way you play this game in a lot of different ways. If you want to run like a Shador to Travis Hunter, boom, you have a Coy Eakin at 3,900 on the other side. If you want to run like Shador, Jimmy Horn, Taj Brooks is there at 84. Josh Kelly's there at 6K. There's just so many ways you can use this game and stack these quarterbacks, even at Shador's price. There's so many value options within the game that it's just so easy to go up and get to him. And this by far has the most shootout potential on the main slate, I think. So I love this game. I'm going to be playing a ton of Shador and Baron Morton.
Are you comfortable having Shador and Baron Morton in the same lineup?
Yes, for sure.
Okay, so full on potential game stack situation. Okay, let's start filling in the blanks. We'll start at the top. So we've got Cam Ward. He projects, around 5% ownership, nothing crazy. You've also got a guy like Chandler Morris on the other side of a triple option academy situation. Does that render him useless? And are you looking to pay for Cam Ward?
You can pay for Cam Ward. He's not a good price adjusted value, but we have so many values that when you run the sims, you'll get some Cam Ward just because his raw projection is so high, and there's really no reason not to just jam in the raw projection at some point when you have all these value guys. So yeah, I like Ward. That game has some blowout potential. If Haynes King plays, the total is going to remain high. If he's out, expect that to drop, but then Miami's spread would likely move in their favor. So I think we're pretty much locked into somewhere around this 37 total, whether or not Haynes King plays. Georgia Tech's defense doesn't scare you. Miami's been slaughtering a lot of teams. And even when they do, their pass rate remains high. This is a pass-based team, 55%. So I like that you have that sort of fail-safe, even when they blow out teams. It's coming through the air with Ward. He's easy to stack. You have players at every single price point. They even gave us Sam Brown at 3,200 if you want to make some sort of risky stacks. But Horton's there in the mid-price range. He's averaging 9 targets per game over the last 4, and you always have Restrepo. And then on the other side, if Haynes King does play, there's pretty clear run backs with Rutherford and Singleton. They're soaking up nearly 50% of the targets for that team. So another game that's pretty easy to stack, and you can get to Ward just because salary allows you to. On the North Texas side, I am a little worried with Army's pace. They're dead last, the single slowest team in the entire country. And North Texas is 5th. Part of the reason Chandler Morris has these crazy stat lines is that pace they're playing with, and they have a 60% pass rate. He's averaging 44 pass attempts per game, and he can run a little bit. I don't know what kind of cap Army's going to put on this. Again, money's been pouring in on North Texas with Army's cupcake schedule to date. So I wouldn't be surprised if North Texas moves the ball against this Army defense, but it at least adds more concern than Chandler Morris typically has in the profile. And I guess just last thing on him, he's a really talented player. This is a TCU transfer, former 4-star recruit. He can play with the big boys. I don't want to have a big stand on him right now. Let's see. He's an 8% of my lineups. I'm running 150. So not a huge portfolio, but he'll definitely be in there to some degree.
Is Haynes King in your portfolio?
I X Haynes King out.
Okay.
And last thing on this game, even with Army's slow pace, the total is still 64.5. So we're expecting Army at some point to hit regression. North Texas, half their secondary, their starting secondary got arrested this offseason and hasn't played a snap. Their secondary is putrid. Honestly, it's a good stylistic matchup for North Texas because Army still has not really thrown the ball this year. They're a triple option team. They're not going to. But yeah, you beat North Texas through the air. And we'll see how Army does against this defense. I don't know what they're really going to do. But ultimately, the total is still fine if you want to play Chandler.
Let's talk cheapies. You mentioned Baron Morton. What about Jalen Daniels? $200 left. Competitive game at home. I know Iowa State's coming off a bad loss, but you look at that spread. KU's supposed to be in that game. Is Daniels and Grimm and some of his guys kind of in that portfolio?
I love Daniels as a player. Volume's always an issue with him. This is going to be a really slow game. Pass rates are low for both teams, below average. But Daniels has been efficient outside of the interceptions. That's really been the main problem with him. He's running more of late. In the last 2 games, 8 designed attempts, 13 designed attempts. That's up from 10 combined in the 2 prior before that. He's going to need to run for DFS purposes. I still think he's fine. Iowa State has played a really easy schedule, and they finally got tripped up last week. They're playing 3rd-string linebackers. They've had a slew of injuries at that position. So the avenue should be there on the ground. Iowa State, shockingly, is allowing 5 yards per carry, even with their win-loss record. So Daniels definitely exploits that. No Highshaw has sort of helped him on the ground. They don't want to use Devin Neal in an every down role for some reason. And rather than give those opportunities to a Sevion Morrison or someone else, Daniels has gotten a lot more of the groundwork. So I think he's fine. If you can't find the 200 to get to Morton, I have no issues playing Daniels. He's going to be on one of my main teams today.
Last couple guys, I actually want to just kind of focus in on one specific game, and then we'll move to FanDuel. And it's the West Virginia game. We know that Garrett Green he is hurt. So Nico takes over. And then on the other side, you've got Sorsby. They're both in that kind of no man's land price range, basically upper sixes. Sorsby 7,900. Are these guys just random flyers in your portfolio? Are they even in there? What are you doing with the Cincinnati West Virginia game?
I'm trying to come a little bit above the field on both of them.
Okay.
I think this game has a lot of volatility, mainly from the defenses. So to set this up, both teams play really slow. That's why the total's sitting around 55 points. It's just below that in some spots, 54.5. But both defenses have strong weaknesses that the other offense should be able to exploit. West Virginia has the worst secondary in the Power 4. The worst one, dead last. They're allowing 9.6 yards per attempt. That's nearly a first down every single time the opposing quarterback throws the ball. They played a lot of quarterbacks that are worse than Sorsby, who has excellent efficiency. On the other side, the biggest weakness for Cincinnati is their D-line. They had a couple injuries in the preseason. They basically have one good player in Dante Corleone. If you run away from him, you can shove it down Cincinnati's throat. What does West Virginia do? They run that power run game. And Nico Marchiol is a quarterback that, while he doesn't have the same rushing efficiency as Garrett Green, he came in as a dual threat. He's a 4-star quarterback. You sacrifice a little bit of the ground efficiency with him, but they don't change their offense at all when he's in the game. And then you still have the 2-headed monster of Donaldson and Jaheim White. I think you could take shots here, which is why I like coming in slightly above the field. This game is one you could very easily see going over the total as long as these teams exploit the opposing defense's weaknesses.
Let's go to FanDuel, and again, we'll see what's different there. And we just had a question about FanDuel. Can you play Ward, Restrepo, and Martinez in the same lineup? Little Miami stack. Yeah.
I probably would leave out Martinez because he's playing. I would just put Fletcher in there instead.
With the QBs over on FanDuel, it's a lot of the same names, but we do have a handful of new guys, obviously, because there's different games, and we've got Nico for Tennessee. Riley Leonard, your boy, is there in a 4-touchdown favorite against Florida State with their lone win. And then Josh Hoover. Josh Hoover's a name I really want to talk about because Oklahoma State's defense could rival West Virginia's. When you look at FanDuel, how different are the exposures over there?
Yeah, isn't that wild that West Virginia has a worse secondary than Oklahoma State?
That's impossible. That can't, that's accurate, but that's not possible.
And West Virginia has had a ton of defensive injuries, so maybe at full strength, they're better than Oklahoma State. We're not going to see that, though. The two biggest differences I have in additions to the FanDuel pool at the top are Dylan Gabriel and Josh Hoover, the player you mentioned. The offense for TCU is very pass-heavy. They haven't been able to find a run game all season long. They've been using Savion Williams at running back recently because none of their running backs are any good. But you're looking at a 60% pass rate for Hoover that has allowed him to backdoor himself into 300 yards virtually every single game of his career. So you can definitely play him. Oklahoma State's secondary is horrible. Dylan Gabriel, you basically just need Maryland to remain somewhat competitive. The spread indicates that it will, but even if it doesn't remain competitive, Gabriel and this team have an elevated pass rate. He is so efficient. You can easily go up and play him. My three most owned quarterbacks there are Shedeur, Gabriel, and Hoover, so you can tell right away that salary is not really an issue on FanDuel either.
No doubt about it. Yeah, if you're getting to those type of guys, serious allocation. But FanDuel also has my boy, the new superhero in the bounce house, even though they're not there today, Dylan Rizek. We talked about him last week. I thought he played well. Now he's got Arizona State. He's dirt cheap over there. Are you buying this guy, even though we have no real sample on how good he really is?
I got 10%. I'm not going to change that. The biggest thing that worked in his favor in that game was the designed rush attempts. He actually kind of filled in the UCF offense. And that was the biggest question, is like, can he run this power run game? 8 designed attempts. That was awesome. If they're going to give him 8 designed attempts, I mean, you can play him at this price, whether he's efficient or not.
I mean, this guy is a wild unknown. And I like that, obviously. I really think that this is someone that might be perpetually underpriced in the second part of the year here. We got a super chat from Darren. Appreciate that. Let's see if we can figure out. I believe these are last names. We've got Hunter and Raymond. I assume that's Travis Hunter, or Taylor and Horn.
I prefer Taylor and Horn.
Yeah, I know Jimmy Horn is someone that you always, is there, or did they just like not price his prop accurately or what?
Dude, this is so stupid. He got hurt 3 weeks ago. Now they've had their bye in between. So he had one game that looked horrible. And then I think this is just negligence in the sports books. They priced his prop way down. So we laddered this all the way up to like 100 yards 2 weeks ago. And Horn had like 86 in the first quarter. He's averaging 53 per game on a full route share in games he's healthy. And one of those games that includes like this 53.5 yards, one of these games that factors in, he got hurt immediately. I mean, he's averaging like 70 yards a game in healthy games with a full route share. It's just like a flat out on an air raid offense. This team has no interest in running the ball. So yeah, I mean, like if you can find Horn props in the 30s, ladder those up. It's just negligence. Like what? It's my favorite prop of the whole day.
I love to hear it. I love to hear it. All right, let's put a bow on quarterback here. It looks like we're in pretty good shape. Sam Levitt, Milrow. I mean, are these just names?
Milrow, you can always play. He's sort of like a player to use in 150 sets as a luxury spend. He clearly has downside, and I would put him behind the other elite signal callers, but that rushing equity is always there with him if he breaks a long one. That's kind of how he has to get there at that price. Levitt's a game manager. They prefer not to use him.
Let's go to running backs. Before I do, we've had so many people already take advantage of this, and what I'm saying is one of my favorite things that we've ever done. Our sims, the ability to use them, the tools in general, have obviously been a grand slam. They've been a home run, and a lot of people have already used them. But what we wanted to do is bring in the opportunity to use them for free for a month or months, depending on how many things you want to claim. And what I mean by that is our link join. It's very simple. There's a link below in the description. When you click it, it takes you to a page, and it's our partner page. All these different sites, BetMGM, Caesars, Bet365, Underdog, Rebet, FanDuel. I could go on and on and on. I'm sure you play on some of them. I'm also positive you don't play on all of them. If there's one in your state that you've been thinking about, if you go to this page and you claim the offer, instantly, what you have to do, you just email our support, and boom, we're going to give you a month of the Sims per claim. It is that simple. It is that simple. It's fantastic. So not only are you going to get the bonuses from the site, you get the tools. So say you do a couple of them. You get a month of NBA, a month of college football. You could get 2 months of NFL, take you right through Thanksgiving and certainly Christmas. It's my favorite deal maybe we've ever done, just because it's pairing 2 awesome things. I love talking about some of the promos that these sites have, but I, of course, love talking about these sims that everyone is using here. Great opportunity to get them. That link is below. You follow those instructions, and you are in business. Now, let's go to running backs. Let's see what we've got here. We talked about a lot of pretty expensive things, but salaries you mentioned aren't bad. And maybe that's because I'm looking at our ownership on running backs, and there are some very popular plays, and some of them are very cheap. And I think it starts with Wisner for Texas.
It does start with him. He's just way too cheap for the role. There are some concerns, and I think maybe it's gone a little too far, but I guess to set this up with Texas, they're playing Florida, who's not going to have Lagway. So you have a game with a 47 total, not great, but Texas is favored by nearly 23 points, and that's moving their direction with the Lagway news. Florida's defense is okay, but this Texas offensive line should be able to run on that defense. And then the team total is 35 points. So you have Wisner, who, I mean, is coming off just some absurd workloads. He has carry counts of 15 and 17 in the last 2 games, 15 targets in that span. Just an absolute monstrous role for this offense. The main concern I have is Jaden Blue still plays a lot. He was in the doghouse for his fumbling issues, but he's on the field quite a bit. He's a little bit more expensive, so Wisner, without a doubt, is the better straight up play. But in the Sims, I was getting like no Jaden Blue and massive amounts of Wisner. I think that's almost gone too far, where I want to split the gap a little bit more. Blue is 12 targets in that span compared to the 15 from Wisner. Blue is kind of iced out of the 15 carry game Wisner had. He didn't have anything, but last game it was 17-10. This has ebbed and flowed a lot this year. And the reason Wisner's gotten an opportunity was because of fumbling. So I'm not 100% sure this is fully his backfield. Like snap counts in their last game, a very competitive game against Vanderbilt, 43 Wisner, 30 Jaden Blue. So I just struggle with, like the 60, 70% you get in the unencumbered Sims. I'm going to bring that down a little bit and make this just slightly closer, coming in a little bit underweight to Wisner, a little bit overweight to Blue. And obviously the position on the Texas backfield as a whole remains pretty in line with ownership. It's just trying to get a little bit different within it.
Easy click and cash.
Yeah, he's probably one of your first ones.
When you look at some of the other running backs, we'll get to Darius Taylor in a second, but I want to stick in the mid-range and even the values. So you've got Army's running back is 5,900 and Udo should be popular. And then you mentioned at the top, Manungai is not there. So what does that leave us with Rutgers?
Antoine Raymond is the presumed lead back at 3,400. I don't think we know this for a fact. Rutgers has had a lot of injuries in their backfield, and he's got to be the favorite. But I mean, I don't know who they're going to use. They've been using, like, they've had players in the past convert from defense to the offensive side of the ball. The workload's going to be risky, but at the end of the day, let's just play this in a worst case scenario. If he has like 12 touches at 3,400, is that enough? Probably. And there's a ceiling for like 25 because that's what Manungai was getting, and maybe he just gets them all. He's the only other running back that's touched the ball since Sam Brown got injured. So you have that in the range of outcomes. I think he should be highly owned as he is. You can play him in a lot of lineups. I currently have 43%. This is a hard one to project because it's late news related. He probably is not going to be as owned as he should be, but I don't know. This is a really hard one to project ownership wise.
It is. I mean, it obviously opens it up salary wise too, but there's a lot of other, we're not particularly starved for value. There's really no one else in that range though, is there? I mean, Fletcher.
You don't need to go down there.
Yeah, fair point.
You can, of course, but we haven't talked about receiver yet. There's like infinite guys below 4K today.
Do you have the same concerns with Army's backfield as you do with Daly?
Yeah, it's just like opportunity costs. You can pay less than 1,000 more and get Phil Maffa, who has like the same carry role, plus he catches passes. You have Devin Neal for less than 1,000 more, same role on the ground, plus he catches passes. Wisner cheaper, same role, plus he catches passes. I mean, it's just like, I understand why Udo projects well. He's in an awesome game environment, but if he's going to be like 50% owned, it's like, I can't do it. Right now I have 30%. That's great. I'm certainly not playing him and Daly together. And that's the other thing is how much of this is recency bias, because prior to the Daly injury, his opportunity wasn't that great. I mean, he's averaging 14.5 carries per game. That's not that good. So, I mean, he has to kind of be at like that 19 to 22 range we saw the last 2 weeks, which I don't know. I have a hard time getting overweight to anyone in Army. I'm going to be underweight to that team as a whole. I just don't know what the upside is when you have a team that's the slowest in the country and doesn't throw the ball ever. Udo doesn't even have a target this year.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you're not going to get that out of that team. So I totally get it.
If you're playing cash, you can play him there. That's kind of how I see it. He has a super narrow range of outcomes with a pretty good projection. Like, Right now, his projection should be just north of 20 points. He's probably going to fall somewhere in like 18 to 25. And unless he scores like 4 touchdowns or 3 touchdowns, I don't really see a lot of ways he's outside that projection. Whereas like with Maffa and some of these other players that are a little more expensive, or even Wisner and Blue, who are a little cheaper, they have so many ways of putting up a ceiling. Udo just doesn't. And I made a rule to absolutely not play him and Daly together.
Let's go up top. Let's talk about the premier running backs on the slate. Darius Taylor, I think, jumps off the page. He's 8,700. He's going to be really popular. Minnesota is just playing good football. They're not running the ball 60 times like they were, but he's going to be really busy. And then I kind of want you to rank him against Taj Brooks and LaQuint Allen. Those are all 8K plus backs. They all project really well. Do you have a preference? Do you want to get a couple in lineups? How do you go about deciphering that?
My preference is Darius Taylor, and it largely just comes down to his role versus the other guys. This pass game role for him is bananas. The offense is different, but his role is not all that different. His touch counts are still absurd, but it might honestly be more valuable this year because he's averaging 6.1 targets per game. That's the second most on Minnesota. He missed a game too. Like he's their third leading receiver right now. He very well could be like their second leading receiver if he didn't miss that first game. This is an absurd role for him. And when they do decide to run the ball more, he's the beneficiary. They're not using any of their transfer backs other than Marcus Majors to change the pace. 2 of the last 4 games, he's been at least 22 carries. And then in the games he's not, he just has absurd target volume. So he's my favorite. He's very, very insulated. I think Taj Brooks is my second favorite. It's just a role thing with him. Since they lost Cameron Valdez, they basically aren't giving any running backs change of pace work. In the last game, he outcarried Jacoby Williams 25-1. Team total is pretty good for this team. He doesn't have quite the same pass game role, only 2.1 targets per game compared to over 6 for Taylor. So that's the real difference maker. LaQuint Allen basically is the same role as Darius Taylor, except this team is projected to trail. And they're playing at Boston College, who's maybe a little bit better defense than the current edition of Rutgers right now. So I'd rank them Taylor, Taj, LaQuint.
Taj, yeah. I mean, Taylor, I think, is pretty clearly one. All right, let's get to the rest of the backs, and then we'll do the same routine. We'll get over to FanDuel. You've got guys like Judkins on this slate, obviously his counterpart in Travion Henderson. You've got Devin Neal, Corey Kiner. What else is there? I mean, it seems like there's a pretty distinct ownership saturation for this running back slate.
Which makes it nice to get off the board. I think Phil Maffa should be higher owned when he's in competitive games. He's going to get like 30 carries. Last game, he had 30 carries. And
that was quite a game.
And this is a 6.5 point spread against BT. This is the meat of Clemson's schedule. You know, they played Georgia, got slaughtered, played maybe the easiest P4 schedule in the country before last week, and then lost again. Now they're in a competitive spot. When these games are competitive, Maffa's touch ceiling is just unbelievably high. He's a player I really like in the mid-price range. Devin Neal is a nice GPP play. I wish they would just commit to him. For whatever reason, they're so reluctant to give him 20 touches. That's the real difference with him. He's still in 24% of my lineups. There's interesting players in like the mid-price range if you want to take some real big stands. Corey Kiner, just think Cincinnati probably throws the ball right over West Virginia. Still, he is a good role. If he gets down at like the 1 yard line or something, he'll come in. Justice Ellison, when Indiana's in competitive games, he runs a lot, but it's a hot hand between him and Tyson Lawton. Trevor Etienne probably would project a little better if we weren't concerned about the injury. He did come out of last week's game, so a little more opportunity to Nate Frazier. Then, of course, you have like Judkins, Henderson. You just kind of need that game to remain more competitive for them to hit a touch ceiling. Otherwise, I guess to round it out, there are some value guys you can sprinkle. The West Virginia backs are nice pivots with upside in a game that has Cincinnati's a run funnel defense. So you can certainly use White and Donaldson. Mark Fletcher was a lot more popular till we got the Antoine Raymond news opening up everything, but he's been playing ahead of Damian Martinez very, very slightly. It's like a 55-45 split, but Mark Fletcher, 3,900 for the Miami team with a good team total. Otherwise, 2 other players I have 1% of. Kiefer Sibley, he had like a 90% route rate for North Texas. Ragsdale is projected to return, so he's very risky. And then Ulysses Bentley, everyone's favorite player on Twitter for Ole Miss, who actually stinks. This is now multiple injuries in this backfield. Like they're down 3 running backs that were ahead of Bentley, and they still listed him as a co-starter with Dominique and Matt Jones. I don't know, man. Like I just think Ulysses Bentley's probably not as good as other people think. Last week, with Henry Parrish going down in the game, Dominique Thomas immediately doubled up the Ulysses Bentley carries. So you could use him. They're just running out of bodies. He's 3,200, but I don't think he is going to ever be in a future back role.
Tough scene. It's a tough scene.
He should have just stayed at SMU. They don't have any running backs either.
He could have been part of the wagon that is the Mustangs. Don't sleep on my team. Anyway, as we go to FanDuel, we actually had a question about some of these timeshares on FanDuel. Would you rather have a flyer with Fletcher or a flyer with Travion Henderson?
They're way different prices.
Let's take a look.
Probably Fletcher.
So on FanDuel, they're only $100 difference.
Oh, definitely Henderson then. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Again, this is why we do this, because there's so much stuff bouncing around. On FanDuel, though, we've got an influx of new backs. Dylan Sampson, 11,800. You got RJ Harvey over there, 11,600. You've got Jordan James I think they're like 20 to 25 point favorites against Maryland. Arizona State's backfield. What are the differences, and who on FanDuel do you think sticks out in running back?
This is a position that's full of value. My 5 most owned running backs are below 10K. It's Wisner again, a lot of overlap as a mispriced Texas running back on both sides. Kyson Brown is mispriced because they didn't know Scatabo was going to be out earlier in the week. Scatabo played limited snaps in their last game for ASU, and with that, we got a decent look at what Arizona State wanted to do. He outtouched DeCarlos Brooks 15-2. So I think Kyson Brown is pretty locked in as the lead back in this game. Devin Neal's too cheap over there at 8,700. He projects a little better. Trevor Etienne is way too cheap over there at 76. He ends up as my 4th most owned running back. Then 5 and 6, 2 of the guys you mentioned that are FanDuel exclusives, Jordan James, Dylan Sampson. With Jordan James, hopefully Maryland keeps it competitive enough, because if they do not, you'll see more Noah Whittington. There's no real other option for Tennessee at this point. They lost Deshaun Bishop. So that role that Sampson has, like 30 touches per game, is even more locked in. 7th, I feel a little bit gross about this. It's Caden Durham for LSU. He's banged up. If he's full go, 20 touches. If not, you'll see Josh Williams come in and play a little bit more. Those are the main differences. I have some sprinklings of guys like RJ Harvey, Ollie Gordon.
You have Blue?
Jaden Blue.
He's only 6,500 over there.
Oh, I do have him. He's actually just behind Durham. So what is that? My 8th most on running back over there, 9%. So nothing crazy.
Okay. Last guy, and then we can get to wide receivers. Do you have any Justice Ellison
on FanDuel? 2%.
I'm interested to see how Indiana looks in general today. They've just seemingly are unaffected by all things, and they destroy all opponents. But we'll see what they do against Michigan today. Sizable favorite. Anything else on the running back side?
See some people talking about Jeremiah Love. They just won't give him the ball. You're locked in at like 12 touches a game with him. If he scores 2 touchdowns, you're looking great. If not, it's a tough scene. Plus, they're huge favorites. His touches might be like 8 to 10 today with the blowout against Florida State, at least on paper.
They're literally like 30-point favorites. So,
as they should be. Florida State is an FCS team this year.
Yeah, Florida State plays an FCS team coming up, fortunately for them. So they've got that going for them. All right, back to business. Let's go to wide receiver. Ooh, Josh Kelly starts there, no doubt about it. 6K, great game environment. He simply seems too cheap. Seems like a cash viable play, maybe the most popular wide receiver on the slate. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I guess maybe we should just knock out this whole game. It's just ripe with value everywhere. Josh Kelly is one of the best values on the slate, even at 10K. He's coming off an 18 target game. The role has been made even better, and it was already awesome by the absences of Dre McCray and Micah Hudson. Those are like 15% route guys. But that sort of put a cap on like 85% of the routes for the studs. That was gone last week. And we did see the extra targets go to really all the players. But Kelly, man, this is an insane role. A 28% target share in an offense that's 21st in pace with a 54% pass rate. That's equated to 10.8 targets per game, 11.8 in the last 4. Caleb Douglas is another elite value. He's averaging 9 targets per game in the last 4. He's 4,600. Coy Eakin is at 5.9 targets per game. He's 3,900. You can play any of these guys. Their route shares are all locked in. They rotate tight end, but no real other issues there. And that's awesome. So you can play this game any way you want. You can even use it like skinny stacks are super live in this game because you could, I don't know, if you wanted to stack the other elite total game and run like a couple guys from North Texas Army, you can do like a Coy Eakin to a Jimmy Horn and have awesome full-time players in this game with good projections. There's just so many ways to play it. On the Colorado side, it's the same thing. You have Travis Hunter up at the top. Super easy to get to him, even with Shedeur. Play 2 3K receivers in this game. Play Raymond, play Wisner. It's so easy to do this. Or if you want to play other studs, go down and take Jimmy Horn, averaging 6 targets per game. Take LeJounte Wester, 7 targets per game. Even Will Shepard's been somewhat serviceable. I'd rather find the 100 for Jimmy Horn, but you could even throw a dart at Will Shepard. It's just so easy to play these guys. I don't really see any reason not to.
With that in mind, because again, they're going to pop up in a ton of lineups via the Sims. They're very popular. They should. You mentioned the one-off potential, the stack potential. Are there pivots? We've got a guy like Jalen Noel. He's only $100 different than Josh Kelly. Now, he's going to be popular in his own right. You've got Ibuka in that same range. You've got Jackson Meeks in that same range. Who are the guys that maybe are in other games that grade out decently in these same neighboring price ranges?
Yeah, Higgins and Noel are solid for Iowa State, even in a game with a total that's not super enticing, but Kansas honestly hasn't lived up to expectations on defense despite returning a ton of starters. The big thing with them is almost 70% of the targets are going to Higgins and Noel. It's just so easy to stack Iowa State or play one of those guys as a one-off. Their roles are so good. 88 yards per game for Higgins, 91 for Noel. Targets are all in double digits per game for both those players. Some other options, I think Elijah Surratt. People don't often just look to Indiana pass catchers. And I get it. Sportsbooks have messed up their projections every single week, underrating this team to our benefit. But that has led to Surratt and these receivers being underprojected. Obviously, our player projections stem from what Vegas believes is going to happen. So when they have an error like this, Surratt's generally underprojected. So I like using him. Then you go down the list. There are some pivots in the mid-range and values. Isaiah Horton and the Miami receivers for that excellent team total against Georgia Tech stand out. Horton's been playing a lot more recently. They sort of switched up their receiver rotation of late, and Horton's now averaging 9 targets per game over the last 4. Jacoby George has played more, 5.3 targets per game. That's come at the expense of Sam Brown, who's been at exactly 4 targets in each of the last 3. His route rate has dropped below 50% in all those games, to the benefit of Jacoby George. So you can still play Sam Brown. That is one thing DraftKings got right. The price has dropped on him to a point that's still playable. But those are excellent alternatives really across the price range for a team that has a 37 team total, which is insulated because they just pass so often. You can still use them even if this does turn into a blowout. Otherwise, there are some other pivots that are maybe a little greasier. The Cincinnati ones are, I don't know if this is too mega mind or not, Ben, but and this goes back to the QB conversation.
Joe Royer?
Joe Royer's awesome. He has a great role. Do they just get there on efficiency, even though pace is so bad? And it's not just that with Cincinnati. They lost Tyron Smith. They lost Aaron Turner. Those guys were basically 50% snap players, and that rendered Jamoy Mays and Tony Johnson 50% snap players. Since their absence, they both got hurt in the same week. Both of them are above 90% of the routes. Tony Johnson, 7.8 targets per game. Jamoy Mays, 7 targets per game. They're not going to project as well as the Colorado receivers or the Miami receivers because you're sacrificing like over 10 points in team total and regular total, but you could certainly use those. The path is there against this paper mache West Virginia secondary. I'm definitely sprinkling those guys. And this is a game that's ripe for like GPP tournaments.
With that in mind, talk about mega mind genius. This feels a little too crazy, but I'm just looking at how this falls. Do you have any Syracuse stacks?
I think there's a lot of opportunity costs. I'm more interested in using Syracuse one-offs. There's
Okay.
still considerable downside with Kyle McCord because of the sacks he takes.
What about so Meeks as a one-off potentially?
I have Meeks, I have Pena, I have Gadsden. Not a lot. I think let's see my highest own of these. Highest own is Meeks, 7%.
Fair enough. And then
He's
it's funny,
awesome.
looking at some of these teams, one team that they're a massive favorite, they're going to be in the playoff. We talked about their running back at length. I don't see a single Longhorn pass catcher anywhere. Is that the case today? Is there anything on the outside for Texas?
They're very dicey. Texas has played a horrible schedule by SEC standards, one of the easiest. And somehow in some of their competitive games, they keep running into backup QBs. It's the case again today. So, I mean, we have a great sample of what they want to do, and it's get all of these receiver snaps. Luckily, Jonte Cook left the program, if that is something you care about. He'd been sort of iced recently. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. But, I mean, you're going to see Gunnar Helm play a decent amount. Matthew Golden, Isaiah Bond is back. Ryan Wingo, DeAndre Moore, Silas Bolden. The corpse of Amari Niblack played in their last game. I mean, this is just a lot of guys who are going to command routes. You need to get there on efficiency. No one is averaging more than 5 targets a game in this offense. And we've seen just basically every game this year, Texas has played as a 3-digit favorite.
Now,
excuse me, 3 touchdown favorite, not digit. Jeez.
3-digit.
That would be wild. 3 touchdown, 3 score favorite, whatever you want to call it.
That would be very impressive. Last question before we turn it over to FanDuel. I'm kind of looking up and down here, and it's a really interesting price point because you've got Travis Hunter, 95. Trey Harris, he might give it a go, but it seems like he's at 93, whatever. There are no 8K wide receivers. There's a $1,600 difference to the next guys, and some of those next guys are 2 Ohio State guys. Now they're like 40-point favorites. Do you have Jeremiah Smith and Ibuka around, or do you just think there's not enough volume to really roster them given the circumstances?
10% Smith, 10%, 9% Ibuka, 1% Tate. That's about where I want to come in. This team total is really high, but you need the opponent to be competent, which
Purdue? No.
Yeah, that's a big gamble. Ohio State has played their fair share of blowouts this year too. And in those games, 1 or 2 guys go off, and then the rest of them give you like 6 points because backups come in quickly.
That's going to be the case today. All right, we'll get to FanDuel wide receivers in just a second. A couple questions from chat. Klubnik or Hoover? It would be Hoover for me.
Same.
Tootin or Brooks?
Brooks.
Be Brooks for me as well. Is there a running back value super cheap? Yeah, that would be Mr. Raymond for Rutgers.
Correct.
Morton and Noel or Shador and Mays?
Morton and Noel.
Yeah, if you build like that, you can get a really nice team in kind of that mid-range.
Both are live though. If you want to play Mays and Shador, you can.
Shepard or Horn?
Shepard or Horn? Horn.
I'm riding with old Jimmy. I need to get down on that prop with you guys. All right. And speaking of that, by the way, actually, before we go to FanDuel wide receivers, it's the perfect time to mention this. If you guys do look for some player props, if you want that type of information, if you want bets in general, or you just want more access, over on OddsShopper, if you have not been to our Tails marketplace, it's something we launched during the summer. Obviously, it's growing quickly. It's very simple. It's just a way for you guys to get more. So you see the pick videos we do, you see some of the content we put out. You don't get a chance to dialogue as much. When we get off this show, if news breaks, sure, you could tweet us, but you're not able to have really a conversation. That's what Tails is for. You can get inside the ropes. You can get the picks. They're synced right to your device. You can get the information you want. Great, great content. Matt has a package. I have a package. All sorts of people have content in there. Come check it out. Have some fun. Come in for a week. See what you think. College basketball as well gets a little dangerous. But yeah, I just want to make sure you guys were aware of that because it's a really cool opportunity. Now, on FanDuel, again, there are some differences, but a lot of the same names. Savion Williams is certainly a difference, though. Premier play of the slate over there, what's the deal?
I mean, TCU, I love this decision. Just like, I don't know how they couldn't find a running back. But anyway, that's led to Savion Williams being the Deebo Samuel of college football this year. He's basically averaging about 10 carries per game over the last 3 games, 7, 11, and 8. And then his targets have been 10, 4, and 9. You're looking at like 17 touches a game with him, 10 of them coming in the pass game. I mean, he's just an unbelievable play across sites.
And clearly you can still pair him with Hoover.
Yes.
Okay. Just want to get that out there. From there, like I said, a lot of the same guys. From Kelly to Noel. Some of the Georgia Tech wide receivers are pretty cheap over there. Haynes King dependent, or can you go to a Singleton or a Rutherford regardless?
I think you can. Well, Haynes is out there right now. It looks like he's going to go. The line's also moved a ton. So I think.
Yeah, it has moved. So that is a good indication. Yep.
You should feel pretty good about those guys.
Okay. Who else we got here? The Oregon guys, we talked very briefly about Jordan James, but on the outside, you've got Stewart, you've got Lowe. How long they play, who knows? But there should be some opportunities there.
Yeah, Tez Johnson's out, so I don't even really think it matters. If they play a limited game, who cares? They're so cheap. They're all prices if Tez is in. Holden should not be this expensive either. So that is also created. Holden has been behind Justice Lowe and Evan Stewart. So I mean, just like these prices are just way off on FanDuel. It's another reason why you can play. It's another reason why my 3 most owned quarterbacks are those 3 studs up at the top. You just have errors on errors and errors.
Can I ask you on the other side of that game? Obviously, they're overmatched, but do you think Ty Felton has any success today?
Yeah, Ty Felton, he's going to probably get there regardless. He's averaging over 100 yards per game still, 113 yards. He's a 32% target share, 12 and a half targets per game. And I don't think it really matters with him. He's just on a warpath.
He's a damn good player on a bad team.
Thanks, Loxley.
It's a shame. Yeah. Couple other guys, then we'll take some questions and we will get on out of here again. If we don't get to something, Jazz Raz Bets, Matt_Gajewski. We're on Twitter. We're in Tails. We're in Discord. It's all good stuff. Savion Williams, what team? That would be TCU. Here we go. LSU and Alabama. We didn't talk about the game a lot. You mentioned Milroe briefly, but there are some big names on the outside. Kyron Lacey, Mr. Williams. Are these guys in play? Caden Lee, I know that's not that game, but some of these SEC wide receivers, pretty appealing price points on FanDuel. Are you seeing the same?
Yes, on FanDuel. Let's see. I'm going to pull that up for wide receivers. Kyron Lacey and Williams, I think, are the most insulated. Out of the whole game, Williams is the player I have the most exposure to. It's 12%. The stacks end up being a little expensive with these teams, but with Alabama, the nice thing is kind of where it's going regardless. It's either Williams or Jeremy Bernard. Bernard's just so unexplosive, so it's kind of easy, I think, just to get to Williams. With LSU, you have Hilton back in the fold. Kelly says Daniels is healthy now. I just don't really believe anything Kelly says at this point. He's constantly lying about injuries, but Hilton did return and have 6 targets immediately.
Yep.
I still think it's Lacey, number 1. Probably Hilton number 2 at the 5K price, then Anderson 3. Taylor, he gets a lot of targets, but he falls down immediately every time he gets him. There's no upside whatsoever with him.
Any thoughts on Jordan Watkins?
He's on the injury report. If he's out there and he looks fine, you can definitely play him. He went nuclear last week.
Horton or Kelly on FanDuel?
What are their prices? Sorry, I'm doing my CSV.
Let's see what we've got here for you. You've got Kelly at 81 and Horton at 74.
That's really close. Probably Kelly still.
Yeah, that's just such a good game. What else do we have here? We didn't really talk about this, even though probably should, because Duke had Miami on the ropes until they gave up like 60 unanswered. Do you have any Jamal Haynes thoughts?
They just are trying so hard not to use him. Cooley looks like he's back today. I don't know.
Let's see.
He's like the Jeremiah Love of the ACC.
Yeah, that doesn't expire a ton. Let's see. Sorsby rushing yards prop. Yeah, I could see it. I mean, 9 for 48. Let me see.
So
I don't have it off the top of my head. I'm gonna look up. West Virginia
22
is
and a half. We're projected 19.7.
okay. So yeah, it's in the range. West Virginia doesn't do anything good, but they're. I'm just looking real quick for you. Let's see.
Virginia
West
doesn't do anything good.
Virginia. Yeah, they don't. I mean, they're actually middle of the road rushing the passer. It's better than their, yeah, as you mentioned, 133rd opponent yards per pass attempt. I'm fine with that. It didn't jump out. Thoughts on Miami stack? Ward, Fletcher, and Horton. Yeah, I think that's a fine tournament stack.
Yeah, I think so too. And I have West Virginia pass rush efficiency at 107.
Okay. See, maybe worse than I have it. On FanDuel for running backs, Kyson Brown or ETN?
Tyson Brown.
Best flex 3.4K, I believe.
That's Raymond's price, is it not?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at right now. I'm pretty sure it is.
I think so too.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's Raymond for sure. What else we got, friends? I think we're in pretty good shape here. Oh yeah, we didn't talk about Wesco. I don't know. Clemson disgraced themselves so badly. It cost me a boatload of money last week. They don't deserve to be mentioned. You should be taking your victory lap. You told me Klubnik was garbage all year, that he'd been beating up on Muppets, and then Louisville's not even good. I don't understand how that happened at home. Do you have Wesco thoughts though?
He's 3,100. I mean, you can play him without a doubt. That's just way too cheap.
Joke. That team, I don't understand. I did watch Clemson basketball last night a little against Presbyterian. They looked better than their football team.
Gracious, Ben.
Out
of all the games, that's the one you picked?
No, I was just watching. Well, I got caught watching Ole Miss and Grambling because Grambling was winning for quite a while. And then Padula got hurt. It was quite a scene in the college basketball ranks. Is King playing from Georgia Tech? All indications look like he is going to give it a go from what I've seen.
Warming up with the first team. He should be out there, I think.
Tech going to beat Miami today. That's the type of stupid thing that I could see happening too. I could see that because Miami, this is the type of game that they lose.
They do it every year, man. I don't think it's likely. I bet Miami took a terrible line, thought Haynes King was going to miss the game. But yeah, I mean, Miami should win every single game this year. Will they? Probably not.
We didn't talk about Navy. They're in a weird spot today too. Do you have any thoughts on like Horvath or just in general?
Not really. I think they're FanDuel only, so I didn't project the game, but
it didn't stand out. Just again on its
South
own.
Florida is terrible. Their defense is not good. So I think you could go back to Horvath. I don't know what his price is, but I think he's going to be fine.
It should be a competitive game though. I think Navy could lose again though.
I think Navy and Army could lose.
Yeah,
everyone's dream of the playoff is dead.
No, I hope Army wins
Army
this
still
week.
isn't lost.
I hope Army wins here so they at least can get to the Notre Dame game undefeated. Raymond and Restrepo or Maffa and Carnes?
I prefer the Raymond side. With Damon Ward back from North Texas, Carnes saw his routes drop. He's not going to be the second target on the team with Damon Ward back. It's going to be DT Sheffield, Ward, and then probably Carnes.
Yeah. Miami should, yeah. My Sooners taking down Mizzou today. I bet Missouri. I hope not, but I also could see that Brady Cook looks like he is not going to play. That line moved against me a little bit, but I was kind of prepared for that. So that'll be an ugly, ugly game. We mercifully didn't have to talk about it. Any final thoughts for the people? I think we're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, my CSV is done. If you have a last second question, throw it in. I don't think we really miss anyone. I don't think I have any hot takes. Watch injuries throughout the day, of course. They'll pop up.
This is a weird week. I'll be completely honest. I don't love it mostly on a betting side. I didn't love a lot of the games that we got. A lot of big spreads.
Yeah, I never liked those games, and I've had a terrible year betting, so I'm not really interested in it right now.
Coming back. It's going to start with...
I bet Iowa last night, so
Iowa,
how things are going.
I bet Wake Forest, and they scored 40 points. They still didn't cover. Michigan money line. Let's get greasy. Whoever you are, RC player 07, if that happens, you better be back here next week because you will need your victory lap. That is a good hot take. I don't see it. Will Johnson's not playing. But you never know.
The only thing that's kept my lights on this year is Indiana.
They're amazing. They really are. It's an incredible, incredible team. I hope they roll them because I have a bad feeling when they go into the shoe. But that's another story for another time. Friends, we did it. Easy stuff. Again, one last call. It's there for you guys. After this show, if you have a couple minutes, go to the description of the video, click those links. Even if you decide not to sign up, it's good to know what we have going on, from the marketplace to the ways to get a free month of The Sims for any sport. It's a good opportunity for you. And of course, we want to grow the Stokastic family each and every day. On the way out, hit the like button, really does help us. And let's go see some avatars at the top of the board today for me, for Matt, and for our man Mike Lawrence behind the glass, powering the show. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Have a great Saturday from college hoops to college football. We'll see you guys next week.